welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a stroke survivor and grateful recovering alcoholic. Today's topic is admitting you're wrong. Part of the sobriety program, step 10 is when I'm wrong, promptly admit it. So after we do all these steps, we, towards the end, the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps have a lot to do with reflection. So looking at my day, I've talked a lot about how I have these habits before I go to bed, and one of them has to do with taking a look back at my day and thinking about where was I afraid, where was I angry, where was I, did I treat everybody with kindness? Was I adding value to the world rather than taking it away? So what I have found, and I'll talk about this, is the more that I do that process before I go to bed and take a look at my day, it goes really nicely with gratefuls. So I will think of 3 things that I'm grateful for, and then it's kind of like the flip side of the coin to look at. Okay, these are all the great things, the things that are happening well for me. Let me pause though. Let me take a look at, am I being grateful throughout the day? Where did I, you know, fall off of my program a little bit? And do I owe anybody an amends? So I can tell you, since I've been doing this over the past 7 or so years, I have been wrong a lot. And some of those times that I'm getting ready to go to bed and I think about my day, I will have things that cross my mind that I'm like, oh, I spend a little more time thinking about how I might have affected others throughout my day. When before I wasn't really thinking back or, thinking again throughout my day what happened. And there have been times that I've I've thought, oh, I wonder if what I said didn't come out the way I meant it to come out, you know? And I'll find myself texting somebody before I go to bed because I'm like, I really need to, just in case, maybe make myself a little more clear or apologize or whatever I need to do. So I've done that a lot. Not a lot, but I've done it more than a handful of times. And I think it just feels good to go to bed thinking it's like cleaning. It's like taking a shower before you go to bed. That's what it feels like, giving my soul a shower before I go to bed. I do find that as I continue to keep doing this, I find less occurrences at the end of the day to look back on and think, I don't think I did that right. I don't think I said that right. I may have hurt somebody's feelings. I find that a little less that's happening. And that's because I try to practice my program in all my affairs. And the program helps me to fast forward the tape and pause and respond rather than react and be kind to others no matter what they are saying to me. But I'm still wrong, on a daily basis. I'm not perfect, I'm just trying to live my best life. And and it takes a lot of practice for sure. So nothing grows in the dark. And I felt my dark place was alive and well over the past 24 hours. I shared in my morning meeting the same thing that I shared with you all about my disability insurance claim frustrations and my sadness that's a result of what, you know, dealing with that and having the head pain as a result of having to fill out paperwork and stuff, and then to come back and have them tell me that my claim is most likely going to be denied is just, it was like a gut punch for me. It was just like a gut punch. But it's been 24 hours and I'm feeling, I don't feel regretful about the way that I reacted to my case manager. I said the first thing that came out of my mouth to her was, I understand that you're just doing your job. And that's not what I felt. But when I was responding to her yesterday, when she called me, I was fast forwarding the tape to when I was going to go to bed last night. So I was fast forwarding the tape a few hours and thinking, how do I want to feel when I go to bed tonight and I review my day? I certainly don't want to remember that I treated this person badly because she's just doing her job. And so I was kind to her. I didn't want to have to send her an email later, call her later and be like, "Hey, I'm frustrated. I'm sorry I took it out on you." I didn't want to have to do that, you know? So, by practicing this, that's a good example of how it's helping me to um again, live my best life, I think, and treat e- treat people kindly. So, when I admit, okay, so let's talk about when I admit that I'm wrong. So, when I'm admitting that I'm wrong, I was thinking about like, what are the feelings that I feel? I feel embarrassed. I feel shameful. I feel guilty. I feel like I'm a failure. I feel like crying. Um, and what I want to do and what this episode is about is stop focusing on the thing I did wrong. Because the thing I did wrong is is what I'm calling a failure. And that's what I usually focus on. And that's the stuff that makes me feel all of those negative feelings. And what I'd like to do instead of focusing on the thing I did wrong is to start focusing on what I learned from it. Our wrongs should inspire us. So, one, I need to take ownership of my wrongs in order to be able to take ownership of my growth and my success. So, looking at the other side of the coin, right? The other side of the wrong is the growth and the success that we gain from it. If I were to look back at some of my successes at my career, I can trace all of them that I can think of right now back to something I did wrong. And I had to have done that wrong thing in order for me to have done it right later. I mean, I'm just the kind of gal that learns things the hard way. But some people don't have to do that. But a lot of things that I learn them the hard way. And the other thing is focusing on me rather than what other people think of me. So I'm going to talk a little more about this later, but it's my wrong, and as a result it's my growth and my recovery journey. And so I want to talk a little bit later about this idea about how admitting that I'm wrong or making an amends, and I don't want to go too much into making an amends because that's a whole nother topic, but really just the process of admitting that I'm wrong. That's a doozy in itself. And how there's a lot of the resources that I checked out today talked about focusing on the other person and their perspective and everything. So I wanted to touch on that, and that might be a little humorous when we get to that part. So I was listening to a TEDx talk. I love listening to these TEDx talks every day. So I heard from an Italian woman named Christelle Carisi. Um, and this TEDx talk was from 6 years ago. And I've heard this before. She said, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. So I broke that down a little bit, okay? I did a little analysis of this. So 10%, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. So if that's true, then that means we can't control 10% and 90% we can control. So from my head and my heart to my fingertips, that's all that I can control. And 10% I can't control. So if I were to translate that again, that means that 10% of life happens outside of me and 90% of life happens within us, within me. So what's thought-provoking to me about this is that for the first half of my life as an active alcoholic and pre-stroke, I spent 100% of my life on what should have been only 10%. I was letting life happen to me, while the 90% of my life that should have been me taking time, reacting, responding, doing all of this stuff that I do now, all of that was replaced with alcohol, and I didn't react to anything. That means 90% of my life, I should have been processing emotions and learning how to react to the 10% that I can't control. But I gave up. I gave up on me. It wasn't until that day, that night, that I was looking in the mirror, when death was looking at me in the mirror, that I started to fight back. I started to give myself a chance to live. And the only way that that was possible was by taking ownership of my wrongs. So, why is it so hard to admit our wrongs? And this is intriguing. So, wait for it. Consider this. People who have difficulty admitting their wrongs are also people resistant to change. So think about that. When we're wrong about something, rather than admitting that we're wrong, our brains find all these creative ways to prove to us that we're right. So and sometimes we're not even realizing that our brain is doing it. we try to think our way out of it. So we rationalize to see if we can change a thought that we are wrong to a thought that we are right. Some of us, we conveniently forget parts of our memories, like literally forget the part of the memory that makes us wrong. And I think this is our brain's way of trying to protect ourselves, because being wrong is most often associated with potential pain and loss from admitting that we're wrong. So, admitting that we're wrong and making amends requires us to be humble enough to question ourselves and be open enough and honest enough to identify the opportunity for growth, to focus on the learning experience rather than the failure. How do we say we're sorry, even if it was an honest mistake? So many resources that I listened to talked about, like I said earlier, understanding the other person's perspective. An apology is about them. It's not about us. That's what I heard over and over today when I was listening to this. And I'm going to disagree. So, at the risk of you and I agreeing to disagree, hear me out. So, everything that I was listening to was talking about uh, empathy for the other person. And it's all about making them feel better and about making right what was wrong. And it's not about making me feel better. It's about making sure, that they feel better. So this is why I feel that this is wrong. Um, and amends, and part of this is from what I learned in my program. And amends is about cleaning my side of the street. It's about doing the next right thing. For me, I'm the one who has to lay my head down on my pillow at night. So I need to be okay. I need to be at peace with what's going on inside Rachel. And it's about turning my face towards the sun. It's not about how the other person responds to me. And I'm still not quite sure how to make an amends without any expectation. This is something that I've learned I'm supposed to do in my program. But quite honestly, if I'm going to say I'm sorry to somebody, I am challenged by not just expecting them to forgive me. You put forth all this effort and thought and caring to what you're going to say, and clearly you care enough about the person or the situation to get vulnerable, right? And to apologize, that I just expect the other person to forgive me. But sometimes they won't, or they can't. And I'm really grateful that I don't really have that in my life. If there are people who, there could be people listening to this who I have wronged and I'm not aware of it. Or that I've tried to apologize to and they didn't tell me that they don't forgive me. And if that's the case, um, you know, I'm no worse or better for whatever's happening in their world. It's about do I feel okay with myself? Do I feel like I'm doing my best? Um, so regardless of if somebody is going to accept my apology, um, I have to take responsibility for my actions. And if I do that, I'm able to live my best life and to find growth, learn from my experiences. Also, and you know, figuring out, let's see, admitting that I'm wrong and approaching someone. I don't ever want to say confronting someone because it's not about confronting someone. It's about communicating, but it's not about immediate gratification either. I mean, I know for years when I was younger, saying I was sorry to somebody, it was like this build up, build up, build up, and anxiety and shaking and everything. And then I say, I'm sorry I did that to you. Whew. I'm glad that's over, right? And that's not what it is. It's about being vulnerable and not only gaining trust from the other person, but giving trust to them. So, my goal in life is not to avoid mistakes. I'm not trying to make mistakes, but I'm not trying to avoid mistakes. It's about accepting that I'm a human being and I'm going to make mistakes. And it's about noticing my mistakes and not looking away from them, inviting them in, and spending time with them. Spending time sitting in my mistake, looking at it, like it's a big bathtub full of one big fat mistake and you're just sitting in it. And it's not because you want to feel bad about it, but you need to get comfortable sitting with it, sitting in it, get comfortable being uncomfortable, look at it, dissect it, name the emotions that drip out of it when you squeeze it and wring it out, you know, and then tell the other person about that experience. It's not, like I said, running towards somebody and being like, oh, I can't wait to get this over with. But really getting familiar with all the ins and outs of the mistake. And I think for me, the longer that I look at the mistake and not try to turn away from it, not try to brush it under the rug, not try to say I'm sorry and then put it behind me, but I don't want to put it behind me. I want to keep it with me so that whenever I need to look at it again, I can look at it and know, oh, don't do that again. I learned this from that mistake. I want it to stay with me, stick it in my pocket. All my mistakes should be easily accessible so that I can look at them again and learn from them. So, after I've spent all that time with my mistake and looking at it and getting comfortable with it, then I get to tell the other person about my experience with that mistake. You know, admitting I'm wrong is not a confrontation. It's not saying, I'm sorry. You can be mean to me and treat me like shit in return. Um, Instead, it's saying, I'm sorry. I've learned something from our relationship. It's the opportunity to nurture a relationship. A wrong admitting a wrong isn't going up to, let's say I wronged my friend. So it's not about me grabbing my friend's hand and saying, "Come over here, let's look at this mistake." And I'm not just pointing it out, but what I want to do is I want to pick it up and I want to hold it in my hand and show it to them and figure out how I can mend it, how I can sew it back together, glue it back together. How can I make our relationship stronger from my mistake? How can I make myself stronger from my mistake? So that's what I have about admitting our wrongs. Good stuff. I think you can probably tell my voice is a little tired. I'm a little exhausted. Um, I could feel it while I was talking. I was like, "Bleh, bleh, I'm so tired." I don't know. I tried to I slept most of the day today. My head hurts today. I think I've been spending too much time trying to do paperwork for my insurance and stuff. And so I'm trying to take a break from that. And my niece came over tonight. So, hi, niece. She listens. I was waving my hand. You can't see that, but I. She listens to my podcast. She's one of my loyal listeners. She came over today, this evening, and took me to Joann's Fabrics because I have a new project that I'm going to sew. But I can't tell anybody what it is because it's a Christmas present for one person that may or may not listen to this episode. And then if it works out, I'm going to make the same thing for a bunch of other people that may or may not listen to this episode. So I can't talk about it. But we went and we got fabric for me to make the thing. And so that was super fun. And we called my mom while we were at the fabric store because we were trying to read the pattern, like how much fabric it called for. And we had some questions. So we called her. I put her on speaker. And I love my mom. And so we were talking to her in Joann's Fabrics, and it was kind of loud. I'm sure the speaker was loud. So people were like looking at us. And then there was a lady who came up our aisle, and she she was kind of, when I asked questions to my mom, the lady was like nodding yes. Like while my mom was saying yes, the lady was nodding yes, So she was like, so finally I was like, "Mom, I think we have an expert over here in my aisle." And so the lady was laughing and she's like, "No, it sounds like your mom is the expert, not me." Anyway, it was adorable. And so I love when my niece comes over and visits with me. Um, so we did that, and then we went over to Party City and looked at Halloween stuff. And that was fun. There was some crazy outdoor Halloween decor. There was this one like moving, it was like a 2-story tall moving tree with a pumpkin head. and and that was crazy. And then there was this little, it looked like it was a tiny little kid with tennis shoes and a sheet over its head with bloody eyeballs dripping down the sheet. And it was like looking back and forth. And I don't know if it was like playing music or going, "Woo," I don't know. But it was adorable, but it was $75. So, us people without a job and uh unapproved disability claims can't be buying a $75 uh Halloween decoration. So, anyway, then we ordered some Noodles and Company. and that was pretty good. And then I had a Snickers ice cream bar, which was really good too. So, anyway, I think that's the latest. I think I just need to go to bed. So, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.